Now then, it's time for today's focus, and there are more than 5 million Palestinian refugees living daily in Lebanon, Jordan, Syria and the Palestinian territories. Now, they're the descendants of 700,000 Palestinians displaced during the Arab-Israeli wars of the mid-20th century. Today, in Focus, we're reporting from Lebanon, where many live in abject poverty. The UN supports them, relying on international donors, but now that funding has been drastically reduced and the refugees dependent on these basic services, well, they're facing a future on their own. France 24's correspondent in Beirut, Leila Milana Allen, sends us this special report.
Life isn't easy as a Palestinian refugee in Lebanon. For 70 years, they've been the country's second-class, not-quite citizens. Limited residency rights mean it now hosts fourth, fifth and even sixth-generation refugees. The UN's Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, provides social services for an estimated 450,000 Palestinian refugees, like RANDA.
Palestinians have absolutely no rights here. My daughter wants to be a doctor, but her Lebanese friends tell her, how can you be a doctor? You're Palestinian, you can't be anything.
A quarter of UNRWA's budget usually comes from the US government. But in January, the US slashed their donation and last month ceased funding altogether. They accuse the agency of wasting money, calling it irredeemably flawed. NOORA's family are Palestinians from Syria. They came to Lebanon in 2011 because of the civil war. Now twice displaced, they fear the worst.
We'll be forced to stay in a tent. I have little children, a boy and a girl. Our situation is very bad. They need milk and nappies, and we can't afford it. Some days we don't eat at all, so that we can feed the children.
The cuts could strike a death blow. Since January, this clinic in South Beirut has been running on emergency measures. With no money for new staff, they're heavily overloaded. Each doctor seeing an average 105 patients every day.
Every time they're sick, I bring them here and they give us medicine. They treat us very well. But we're afraid they'll decide to stop the UN card. What will we do then?
The agency doesn't just provide healthcare. More than 32,000 children attend its 69 schools across the country, each named after a town in the former Palestine. They're taught to dream big and believe they can do anything. 12-year-old RAYAN doesn't fall short.
I like to be an astronaut. I like space and discovering something new. I like to be the first Palestinian who get on the Mars.
But the reality is worlds away. Even if they beat the odds and make it to university, Palestinians are banned from the most lucrative graduate-level jobs. Now their access to basic education is under threat.
I feel very different from the other because I'm Palestinian. I feel very afraid and feel sad. Sometimes I cry. Education is right to everyone, and I want to get my right.
UNRWA Education Officer MASRIEH worries the uncertainty takes a heavy toll on her students.
If you ask any of them, you'll find that they are, even though they are, let's say that 11 years old or 12 years old or whatever, if you ask them, you'll find them they are adults. They are not young, because you know that sometimes that misery and that stress and that bad conditions of life teach the students more than we teach them. They are living these conditions inside their homes.
More than half Lebanon's Palestinian refugees live in camps like these. Built to be temporary, many of the buildings are crumbling where they stand. Most families can't afford repairs. By law, Palestinians can only do low-income work, so the poverty cycle continues. There's one exception. All the doctors, teachers and support staff employed by UNRWA are Palestinian refugees themselves. So if new funds aren't found, thousands will be out of a job, with no chance of another.
No post will be available. That means some of the staff will be out, and it will affect his family, and we will have no source of funding. And this is one kind of another massacre.
Back at the clinic, raised voices echo in the waiting room. These patients know who they blame.
America and Israel want to humiliate us like dogs, and the Arab world too. The U.S. wants the Palestinians to be resettled here, but here they don't want that.
Many Palestinians here feel the noose is tightening around them. Their host countries refuse to grant them further rights, and now what little they do have may be taken away. For now, facing a $217 million budget deficit, UNRWA says they can only afford to keep these schools and clinics going until the end of the year. Beyond that, their future is uncertain.